Hi everyone, this is a quick overview review of the external cause codes. I know that there has been some confusion between external cause codes and Z codes, so I wanted to hopefully clarify a little bit of that. There are some similarities between these two types of codes, but some real differences as well. So let's jump into it. So what are external cause codes? External cause codes are a special subset of ICD-10. It has its own index, and these codes provide context for injuries only. They are not diagnosis codes. They are not encounter codes. So that is probably the way that they differ the most from Z codes. Z codes can include encounter codes, things like encounter for a a vaccination or preventive service, and Z codes can provide some additional context that's unrelated to an injury, like personal history of breast cancer or family history of alcoholism or something like that. But external cause codes are exclusively providing context for injuries. What also makes them unique is that they are not required for a completely billed code. However, they are encouraged because they do provide some much needed context for specific situations. If a patient comes in with a very unusual injury, then these codes can explain why this patient has such an unusual injury, and also why the medical team might be making different decisions than they would in other circumstances. So this is also useful for things like assaults, rapes, child abuse. It provides some additional context for why medical teams might make different decisions when seeing patients with specific injuries that are related to more unusual circumstances or more extreme circumstances like rape or child abuse. So it's important to know the main terms for the external cause index. These are the main categories that you will be looking in. There are others besides these, but these are the primary ones that you're going to check. Accident is definitely the biggest category, and that involves the majority of motorized vehicle accidents, and even some non-motorized accidents. You know, if you're pulling a chariot, then you're probably going to go into the accident category when you tip that chariot over. Activity is going to be things like cooking, cleaning, fishing, sewing, to provide context for injuries related to those activities. Assault is where you're going to find, yes, anything related to an individual being attacked or assaulted, but also things like fights, bar fights, brawls, stuff like that is in there. Burns are obviously related to burns, but it does have a lot of subterms related to types and location of burns. Not necessarily location on the body, but where the individual obtained that burn. Exposure is kind of a general category, but it has a lot of circumstances in there, and it relates to when an individual is injured due to their proximity to something else. So maybe they're not directly, falling off of something, but maybe they are close to something that injures them, or I know that bonfire is in there, so they're exposed to a bonfire, so they have smoke inhalation or something like that. It can provide some context for some of those more specific circumstances. I definitely would encourage you to look through that one because it's kind of tricky unless you see it. But once you see it, it'll make more sense. Fall is a big category. A lot of things fall into that category. Lots and lots of subterms there. Contact with is another general category, but this is where you're going to see a lot of the animal codes. So contact with a dolphin, contact with a snake, lion, alligator, things like that. And then also, and those are mostly injuries that are not bites, because a lot of times it'll refer you to a bite code, but if the injury is not a bite, you will just use contact with that animal. But there's other items in there that are not animals. I know that there's contact with different machinery, tools, weapons that are, so when you have those injuries that are not necessarily an assault or something like that, then you would use a contact with that item that resulted in an injury. And we'll look at those as well. And then place of occurrence is another really big category, and that is when you can specify where the individual was harmed. Maybe they, fell in the bathroom or fell on a driveway, something like that. These are really useful, particularly for injuries that might result in a workers' comp claim. So if they fell at work or in an industrial setting or something like that, those might be useful codes that are utilized for those circumstances. So those are the main categories, but like I said, these are definitely not the only ones, and you'll see a lot of other ones, but these are the ones that most of the external causes fall into one of those categories. So how do we use this index? It's very similar to using the alpha in that you want to identify the main term and then look for a subterm. However, what makes it a little bit trickier is often the main term is not going to be documented, and you have to kind of extrapolate or interpret the documentation to figure out which main term applies. So here are some examples. Patient slipped on step and sprained her ankle. That's going to be in the fall category. So she fell off the step, but it says slipped. So that might confuse you at first, but that is going to be in the fall category. Injury caused by improper use of power drills. So we don't know if they were burned or if they had some kind of laceration or whatever. That's going to be a contact with code. So we know that they had some contact with a power drill that resulted in an injury. So the code will be most likely in the contact with category, and then the subterm is going to be with tool or with power tool, or maybe it's tool with power drill. They might get that specific. You want to get as specific as possible, but sometimes you can't, and so you might just have to do a more general contact with a tool. But I do believe in this circumstance they have power drill in there. Patient was found in bathroom unconscious. So this would be a place of occurrence code, and that would likely be residence, bathroom. So bathroom would be the place of occurrence. So like you see, the documentation doesn't say the place of occurrence was in the bathroom, but we are able to extrapolate that that's the kind of code that we'd be looking for. The index is heavily cross-referenced. They refer you to a lot of different things. And then when you look in the actual tabular, which you should still look in the tabular, you'll see that there are a lot of very general codes that are all lumped together. So a lot of different injuries or contact with or exposure to might have the same code, but that's very, very common. So I don't want you to get worried if you keep getting referred to a different term. That's very common with the external cause codes. So let me flip to the other camera just so we can walk through it a little bit, and then we will come back and do a few examples. Okay, so here is our book. I just adjusted the light, so hopefully you'll be able to see everything. You're going to flip up to the external cause code tab, which is after the neoplasms and the table of drugs. We did put a tab there, so hopefully you have one. Right here on page 602 is where it starts, and you'll see one of the very first categories is accident, and this category will go on for many, many, many pages, and it includes everything from a coal car to a diving accident, forklift accident, pickup truck, skateboard, a powered craft accident. I don't know what that is, but it has it in there. So all kinds of different things are in here. And if you want to kind of see, a lot of these are going to refer you to a different code. It's not going to immediately give you a code like pickup truck or van, see accident, transport, pickup truck, occupant. So it does refer you to another place. So I don't want you to get worried if you see that often when you're looking things up. So I said accident goes through for many pages. Activity starts on page 615. And you can see all kinds of different things. Baking, ballet, barbells, even down here, blackout game. That sounds horrible. Boogie boarding, bowling, dirt digging, diving, dumbbells, all kinds of different things are in here. So this would be the activity that led to the injury. Assault starts on page 617, and this is where you're going to see assault with a firearm. Rape is in here as well. Stabbing, assault with a dagger is here. And then fight and fist, foot. I don't know what a foot fight is, but it's in there. Unarmed fight basically is in there. And then it specifies if there's a weapon, then you would see assault by type of weapon. So those are the common ones that you'll use with assault. Burn starts on the next page on 618 and has everything from acid, cigar, a hot cooker, hot air, hot drink, gases, household appliance, all kinds of different things are in the burn category. Contact with starts here on page 620. And this is where you're going to see a lot of different things that are, accidental contact with things that result in an injury. So like an axe is in here. So if you were attacked with the axe, that would be an assault. But if you just, got injured with an axe, that's just going to be accidental contact with that object. And there's a lot of different things in here if you want to look through here. A lot of these are going to be the animals, like I said, dolphin, orcas in here, sea lion, shark, amphibian, toads. A lot of that is in here. And then also kind of random things like dry ice, edge of stiff paper is in here. So I'm assuming that's a paper cut. So lots of different things are in the contact with category, and that does go on for several pages as well. You'll also see that there's a category called crash, and that is a little bit more specific than accident. If your documentation specifically says crash, I would start here, and if you do not find the correct type of crash you're looking for, then I would go back to accident. But here you can see there are a lot of different things like aircraft accident, helicopter accident, it even has spacecraft accident. So if you have a UFO crash in your yard and you get a cut from it, there you go, there's your code. So I would encourage you, if you get documentation that says crash, to start here, but otherwise you'll probably go to accident and then go by whatever vehicle was in an accident. Drowning, obviously lots of different ways to drown: bathtub, tidal wave, watercraft accident. The exposure to category starts on page 627. And there's going to be a lot of different things in here. Like I said, bonfire is in here. Exposure to the cold, exposure to environmental tobacco smoke, exposure to let's see what else is in here. Fire. A lot of fire codes are in here, so definitely look through those. And then fall codes start on page 629. And you'll see a lot of different kinds of fall codes. Everything falling down an embankment, an escalator, a hill, a ladder, a ramp, to slipping on a moving sidewalk, falling off of a step, falling down a ladder, falling off of a ladder, falling in an aircraft, you know, everything is in here. There's a lot of ways you can fall and get injured. So that is there. And I would just, whenever you get a code that somebody slipped, tripped, something like that, it's going to be in the fall category, most likely. There's also a big section about military in here. So if you work for the VA or work in another military capacity, they have all kinds of injuries that are very specific to military operations, friendly fire, flamethrowers, nuclear weapons, radiation, things that are hopefully just specific to military, but when they occur in a military setting, we do have our own special codes for them. So you can look there. And then place of occurrence starts on 637 down here at the bottom. And this is going to be, like I said, the location where an injury happened. Most common is going to be home, and that is under residence, non-institutional or private residence. And then it does specify everything down to bedroom, you know, dining room. It can get even more specific. It can go into apartment. It can go to boarding house. Most of the time, your documentation is not going to have things like that, that specific, but occasionally they will. So if you ever have a documentation that says somebody slipped in the garden of their boarding house, we've got it. It's right here. So, but most of the time, you're just going to get slipped in the garden, right? And then they also have places of business, cafes, banks, trains, anything like that is in here. So that is the external cause. Those are the main categories. There's a lot of other categories. War operations is in here, which also obviously is going to play off military. Terrorism is in here. A lot of different categories are in here, but those are the main ones. So let me flip back to the PowerPoint and we can do some examples. Okay, so here's some examples. Luna is a 27-year-old female. She fell off a ladder in her apartment's bedroom and sprained her ankle. So I'm not going to go and show you these examples in the book, but I'm just going to kind of show you how to figure out the main terms. So we know that she fell off of her ladder. So like I showed you, there was fell from a ladder, fell into a ladder, fell off a ladder. So we're going to probably go to fall, comma, ladder, or fall off of subterm ladder. And then the place of occurrence is going to be an apartment. So like I showed you, residence, apartment, bedroom. So it can get really specific there. So those would be the external cause codes that we'd use. Obviously, her diagnosis code is going to be the sprained ankle, but these are going to be the external cause codes. Oliver is a 52-year-old male who presents with a concussion sustained in a fist fight at a bar. Well, first of all, grow up, Oliver. Why are you getting in fights at bars? You're too old for that, right? But secondly, his diagnosis code is going to be this concussion. We don't care about that today, though. We're just looking at external cause codes. So he was in a fist fight at a bar. So we're going to look at assault and fight. And like I showed you, there was that code that was no weapons involved. Fist fight, and so that would be the code that we use, and then the place of occurrence would be a bar. So those are the two external cause codes I would use for this scenario. So obviously, these don't show you, the documentation doesn't say was in an assault, comma, fist fight, no weapons at a bar, and a bar was the place of occurrence. It's not going to get that specific, but we're able to extrapolate from this that these are the categories that we're going to be looking at as an assault and place of Okay. And it just takes experience, and you're not going to see it a ton in the real world, but you're going to get tested on it. And there'll be, maybe some questions about it on the national exam as well. So that's why we need to know how to do it. Okay, so let's do some crazy ones. So let's look here. A 13-year-old female presents with blistering obtained from interacting with a venomous centipede at the local zoo. And so we're going to look at venomous centipede, local zoo. So it's going to be contact with a venomous centipede. And the place of occurrence is going to be the local zoo, right? So those are the two we're going to look at there. And let's see here. The patient is a 21-year-old male who obtained a laceration in an accident at his local casino when he lost control of his hoverboard. That sounds like a fun time at a casino with a hoverboard. So we know that so we don't know that this was a crash or that he fell off of the hoverboard. We just know that he had an injury obtained when he lost control of his hoverboard. So he might have like slid up against a wall or something like that and got a cut. It doesn't say that he fell off of, and it doesn't say that he crashed it. It just says that he was in an accident and he lost control of it. So we will do accident with hoverboard. And then the place of occurrence is going to be the casino. Okay, so if we want to hold on 1 second, and I will flip over to the other camera. 1 moment. Okay, I had to write those down real quick. So the first one was contact with a venomous centipede that took place at a zoo. So we are going to come up to our index, and we're going to look for contact with. And this is on page 620. Contact with, I'm going to come all the way down. There's caterpillar down here, not looking for caterpillar. Up here is centipede, X58. Okay, and it does even specify that it's venomous. So we are going to go check out X58. Okay. X58 is on page 1523, and this is one of those really general terms, exposure to other specified factors, right? Accident or exposure not otherwise specified. It also tells you to use the appropriate 7th character, initial counter, subsequent counter, sequela. Since we do not have indication that it's a subsequent or sequela, we are going to use A for initial encounter. Okay, so this is why you look it up in the tabular, because I did not know just from the index that we could not use this code by itself. Okay, so that's why you always look it up. So we need x58.a, or not dot, but x58a, and then we're going to go look up the place of occurrence, which is going to be the zoo. So let's look at the zoo. First, we'll go over to place of occurrence. And that is on page 639. And up here I've highlighted it. It says zoo. It's right below youth center. Y92.834. Y92.834. Looks like those are going to be our 2 codes, but let's go look that one up just to make sure. I will say most of your place of occurrence codes are Ys. Okay. Okay, so here is Y92.834 zoological garden. It specifies that it's zoo as the place of occurrence of the external cause. So yeah, so the external cause. The main category is recreation areas. And so we couldn't just use this code up here because there's the red stop sign, but down here it's specified enough that it's a zoo. No other additional codes required, no excludes codes, nothing like that. So we are good to go. We are going to use Y92.834. Okay, for our second one is an accident with a hoverboard. That just makes me happy. Not that the poor person was in an accident, but that we actually have a code for accident with a hoverboard. What a time to be alive. Okay, so we're going to flip up to accident. And I'm going to flip to, it's going to be it's kind of transportation. And I'm going to look down to hoverboard and see if it's in there. It is hoverboard V00.848. So V00.848. It's right here. Sorry, I did not highlight it yet. So here it is. It's highlighted. V00.848. As you can see, it is a new code. That's why it's got that green triangle next to it. But it's a code that makes me happy, so we're going to use it. V00.848. So let's go ahead and look that one up. Okay. So, and it is here on page 1467. V00.848. Yes, it's a new code. Other accident was standing micromobility pedestrian conveyance. That's a mouthful, but it does specify under here accident with a hoverboard or accident with a Segway. So those are the two that we're going to look at. So we have V00.848. No other codes required. It doesn't say we need to use any additional characters, no excludes or anything like that. So we're going to go ahead and use that code. Let's flip back to place of occurrence and see if we can find casino. I bet you a lot of accidents happen at casinos, so I'm sure they have it. So place of occurrence, let's look here on page 637. Y92.59 is right here. So that is the one we're going to use. Okay, so let's go double check that. I'm going to pause the recording real quickly while I get this flipped back over. Okay, sorry about that. So these are the codes that we looked for. Contact with a venomous centipede was X58A, and the place of occurrence was the zoo, Y92.834. And then for our second one, accident with a hoverboard was V00.848, and the place of occurrence was that casino, Y92.59. So we did figure it out. So hopefully those are making more sense to you. Hopefully the difference between the external causes and the Z codes is a little bit clearer now. If not, definitely put something in the discussion board. I will say if you have questions about external cause codes or Z codes or neoplasms, because I know that came up a couple times, if you can provide me with specific examples of questions that confused you, that is the best, because then I can walk through those with you. But if we just say, hey, I don't understand this concept, yes, I can make a big video like this, but I might not get to the exact situation that was confusing you. So if you run into a question and you're like, I have no idea how to do this, go ahead and write it down and we can walk through it. And if it's from your workbook, definitely let me know and I can look at that specific example and then find other similar ones so we can make sure we really address it. But this has just been a walkthrough, a review of it. And so hopefully it has been helpful for you, but let me know what else you're needing. Thank you. Have a great day.